Hiroshi is a loser gamer who hates his current depressing life. However, everything takes a turn when a big plotted MILF offers him to live another life in a super realistic but impossible game, and if he manages to complete it, she will let him clap the big twins. One morning, in the faculty room, Hiroshi's teacher corners him for a conversation about his future and life after graduation. Yasuoka tries to nudge him back to track running. Hiroshi used to be a highly successful student athlete, but 2 years ago, he quit sports altogether after a fatal accident, making him depressed since then. On his way home, Tanishiro and Mishina bully him. He takes out a cash note from his pocket and hands it to the bullies like always. A sad and devastated Hiroshi wanders around the streets and accidentally stumbles across a game shop. Inside, he asks the female employee if they've got his favorite game in stock. The employee offers him a deal by saying that she does have a game that costs only $100. Thinking it's his favorite game, Hiroshi jumps at the chance and buys it without a second thought. But as soon as he gets the game in his hand, he realizes that it's not what he wanted, rather it is Kiwame Quest. This annoys Hiroshi, and he tries to return it. But the employee uses her well-endowed assets to sweet-talk him into keeping it. She hypes the game up as an adult-oriented experience and invites Hiroshi to play later with her, making him fall into the cougar trap. At home, he retreats to his room to fire up Kiwame Quest. As the game boots up, he's greeted by an angelic figure who declares him the hero tasked with saving the world of Aberdeen. His first mission is to leave the city and head to Flora Castle. Hiroshi wakes up in a game world which is so lifelike that it's disorienting. And on top of that, he can even feel pain, which catches him off guard. Seconds later, a young girl named Alicia bursts into the room, calling him by his real name and claims to be his childhood friend. Then Martin, Alicia's older brother, shows up in the room and says that he and Hiroshi have been best friends since childhood. Suddenly, Hiroshi remembers the angel's instructions about Flora Castle and immediately asks the other two how to leave the city. Alicia and Martin freak out as soon as they hear this and warn him that the city guards would hunt him down for even thinking about it. Martin explains they are living in a town as strict as an insecure dude with his young girlfriend. This town is cut off from the outside world because there are goblin-infested lands beyond its borders. Despite hearing this, Hiroshi remains cocky and overconfident like a noob gamer and insists he can handle the goblins. Martin, however, knows that this small twink is not ready to face any sort of problems and challenges him to a sparring match. It doesn't go well as Hiroshi gets pummeled like he is made of cardboard. However, in a burst of frustration, he tackles Martin while he's eating an apple with a knife, which accidentally causes the knife to be lodged into Martin's face, dying on the spot. Alicia, who had been watching this, gets extremely enraged and chases Hiroshi as a crazy freak out of the house. After fleeing through the city for a while, Hiroshi runs into the game store clerk Riona, who now appears as a fairy. She is there to guide him as an in-game avatar and help him understand how things work. Riona then points out that Hiroshi is wearing a collar, which shows his in-game progression. But to her utter shock, the collar brands him with the title Best Friend Killer. Riona drops a bombshell. Hiroshi's not-so-nice title, Best Friend Killer, is permanent. The game system, which is designed to mirror reality, doesn't allow data resets or restarts, and it auto-saves every move. His only way out is to buy a new console. Riona casually mentions that she sells one at her shop for only 120,000 yen, leaving Hiroshi fuming at the obvious corruption. He demands a refund for the game, but Riona shuts him down, citing the store's strict no-refund policy. Trying to be practical, she suggests they track down another player named Ginji, who, 10 years ago, when the game launched, also killed his best friend and might be able to help. Before setting off, Riona tells Hiroshi to check his right pocket, where he finds 30 gold, the in-game currency. She advises him to buy cheap clothes to hide his ugly face and disguise himself. It turns out, rumors of Martin's death have spread through the city of Ted, and wanted posters featuring Hiroshi's face are plastered everywhere. At a clothing store, he tries to buy an outfit originally priced at 15 gold, but the shopkeeper, who is aware of his criminal status, jacks up the price to 25 gold. Hiroshi cannot do anything, and is forced to pay the money. As dusk settles, they head toward the casino where Ginji, who is a pot-bellied and rather famous gambling addict, is likely to be. On the way, Riona fills Hiroshi in on the history of Ted, the isolated city they're navigating. Their journey takes a dark turn when they're ambushed in a narrow alley by a vengeful Alicia, who has gone full psycho, wielding the same knife used in her brother Martin's death. She lunges at Hiroshi, hell-bent on revenge. He barely manages to escape, fleeing to a log cabin in a forest where the game slaps him with a new, undisclosed title. Exhausted and fed up, Hiroshi tries to log out, only to discover he can't because he's still in combat mode. Out of nowhere, Alicia reappears, slashing his left hand with her knife. Thankfully, Riona swoops in, attacking Alicia's eye and giving Hiroshi just enough time to escape as Alicia screams her vow to kill him. Finally out of combat, Hiroshi logs out, shaken but relieved, wondering when he last ran that hard in real life. The next day at home, Riona messages Hiroshi, urging him to jump back into Kiwame Quest. At school, he chats with his friend Takafumi about his wild experience in the game. Takafumi, dismissive, calls video games outdated and childish, suggesting Hiroshi should deal with his so-called friends instead. Back home, Hiroshi gets an earful from his sister Kaede for the loud noises he made the previous night. After their spat, he logs back into the game, where the wound on his hand still stings. He finds a medicinal herb but, thanks to the game's brutal realism, has no clue how to use it. Just then, a stocky figure approaches, mistaking Hiroshi for a new NPC. It's Genji. After helping Hiroshi heal his hand with the herb, Genji leads him to the casino to talk. Over their conversation, Genji reveals he killed his best friend Enrique and another friend using judo techniques a decade ago. He then shares a story about meeting Kamui, the only player to ever beat Kiwame Quest, and brags about Kamui's impressive game title. Hiroshi, envious, admits it's far better than his own. Genji, with a sly grin, calls Hiroshi's title heartless. Then, in a twisted act of help, Genji shows that he is as reliable as a gold digger as he rips off Hiroshi's cloak and shouts to the crowd that the best friend killer is among them. He calls for the city guards to swoop in, leaving Hiroshi exposed and betrayed. Hiroshi's gut drops, but Genji leans in and says that if he can get through the interrogation, he might walk free. Before Hiroshi can think, city guards barge in and say he's under arrest. Freaking out, he tries to make a run for it, but Genji grabs him, throws him down with a judo move like a laborer yeeting a sack of rice, and holds him until the guards take over. As they haul him away, Genji gets paid some coins and tells Hiroshi not to admit he killed Martin, or he'll end up in jail. Genji knows the deal, having done 13 years for his own crime and now living on parole. Outside, the guards drag Hiroshi through the streets of Ted. People stare, whisper, and point at him, as if he were some sort of circus animal being paraded around. When the group stops in the city square, the crowd gets nasty, chucking stuff at him and yelling insults. Hiroshi's desperate, so he tries telling the head guard he's the hero meant to save Aberdeen. The guard just laughs it off, calling him another delusional crook. In the distance, Hiroshi spots Alicia watching, and her cold stare freaks him out. Scared out of his mind, he begs the guard to lock him up, just to get away from her. In the jail, the head guard says Hiroshi's stuck there until they're ready for his trial. Pissed off, he tries to log out of the game, but he's trapped in some game event that won't let him leave. An hour creeps by, and he's starving. Plus, he really needs to pee. The game's realism is starting to feel like a sick joke as he finds a gross-smelling toilet in the cell. But right as he's about to use it, Martin's ghost shows up, accusing him of murder. Hiroshi swears it was an accident, but Martin demands he remember a promise they made under an apple tree. Hiroshi's mind is blank, and that triggers the Martin time event. He remembers Genji talking to people who weren't there, probably the ghosts of his own victims, and realizes he's in the same mess. Martin's ghost grabs his shoulder, puking blood and ranting about his life, which was cut short, and this leaves Hiroshi rattled to his core. Before long, a girl named Mizurisa shows up and takes Hiroshi from his cell to a creepy room. He hopes it's some kind of adult time event, but nope, it's a torture event. Mizurisa turns out to be a total sadist, and she grins as she gets ready to saw off his limbs. Just as Hiroshi is losing his sanity, Riona pops up and apologizes for being late, because she was watching a stupid K-drama again. Hiroshi's annoyed at her, but he is also relieved as he thinks she'll save him. To his utter disappointment, she just cheers him on, saying that if he can tough out the torture, his criminal record will be cleared. The pressure is too much, and Hiroshi ends up peeing himself in fear.
Why are you gay?
Mizurisa, who is weirdly stoked by watching this, calls it the best piss she has ever seen and gets ready to start cutting some limbs. Right then, the head guard steps in and reveals that Tesla, the head of the city guard, wants to talk to Hiroshi. Thrilled to dodge the torture, Hiroshi also figures out that he has accidentally stumbled on a new game trick, something nobody's found in the 10 years since the game came out. He earns a new title, though it's not clear what it is. Finally free from his chains, he logs out and swears he's done with Kiwame Quest for good, as he is shaken by how brutal it all feels. Hiroshi returns to the real world in a panic after nearly going through a weird torture event in the Kiwame Quest game. Immediately, Hiroshi checks himself to see if he had peed himself in real life, and to his relief, he didn't. Looking at the Kiwame Quest game cartridge, Hiro notes how it's the same as last time. Hiroshi then goes into a flashback, and it is revealed that he was the star athlete of his school and was about to compete in a major race, but this wasn't just any competition. The level of talent among the runners was high, and sitting in the audience were actual scouts, ready to see who they might recruit for their teams. Before the event, Hiro went off to clear his mind and ended up running into an Olympic athlete. The athlete gave him some encouraging words, saying he had high expectations for Hiro and hoped he would put in a great effort and win. But during the conversation, Hiro forgot one crucial thing: he needed to use the bathroom. As the race begins, everyone is focused, waiting for the results. Hiro, however, is clearly nervous, and he starts the race slowly for some reason, but even when he manages to recover near the end, he trips. And to make matters worse, he wets his pants in front of the entire crowd. That moment changed everything for him. From that day on, he lost all desire to run again. It left a scar that he still hasn't healed from. In the present, while having breakfast, Hiro gets into an argument with his sister. She's frustrated because she can't concentrate on studying at night due to the noise he makes while playing games. Hiro tells her she's overreacting, but says fine. He'll sell the video game because it is worse than eating a reheated pizza that tastes like rubber. But for some reason, instead of being satisfied, his sister gets even more upset. She calls it pathetic that he first quit running to play virtual reality games, and now he's quitting those too. Their mother just watches the argument unfold and gently asks K-Day to be more patient with her brother. She explains that she's only sad because she misses having the cool big brother she used to brag about to her friends. Hiroshi knows that this kind of thinking is not healthy and slightly creepy, but anyway, he is clearly not in a good place. He's distant, numb, almost like nothing matters to him anymore. At school, he gives money to the thugs without them even asking, just to avoid being bothered. He ignores his friend. He ignores his teacher. By the end of the day, he visits Riona at her game shop to sell the game. She's surprised by his decision, and Hiroshi gets annoyed when she asks why he wants to sell it, like she doesn't already know everything he's been through. Still, she tells him it's pointless to try to sell it since no one will buy it, and he'll just be wasting his time. Instead, she offers him some interesting surprising information. She asks if he remembers the only person who actually beat the game, and then reveals that his real name is Kamui, and now he's successful in real life. Apparently, back in high school, he wrote a full walkthrough for the game that is currently pure torture for Hiro. The problem is, most players couldn't even get through reading the guide. This catches Hiro's curiosity, and he decides to check it out. It turns out the guide is incredibly offensive, like it was written by a wannabe edgy 4chan member, so much so that players felt crushed and humiliated just trying to get through it. Still, Hiro refuses to give up. He keeps reading, hoping to find something useful. The guide explains how to deal with Alicia and the ghost of the brother. It mentions collecting artifacts and says that Hiro even had a sword from the very beginning, but he never noticed. In theory, he now has everything he needs to try again, but there's one final push. Riona casually mentions that if Hiroshi manages to beat the game, she'll marry him. Her massive softies were probably the one thing that could have convinced him, because otherwise he was never planning to touch the game again. In the end, he gives in and logs back in to pick up right where he left off. Now, he heads toward the city guard headquarters, where he's been summoned by the head of the guards, the man who gave the order to release him. Upon leaving the prison, they began a journey to the mansion of the city's ruler, Queen Govern, who sounds like she has been named by a third grader. There, they finally meet Tesla, who was the person who summoned Hiroshi in the first place. This redhead actually turns out to be the first kind person in the game. He tells Hiroshi that he and some of his men had analyzed the crime scene where Martin had been stabbed, and everything indicates that it was an accident. Tesla claims he thoroughly looked at all the clues, and according to him, initially he thought Hiroshi could have used a sword to finish off Martin, but upon deeper examination, things were not as simple. Also, analyzing the chronology of the crime, it is evident that even a professional would have found it difficult to finish off Martin. But seeing how Hiroshi looks like he has never done a pull-up in his life, everything indicates that he was not the culprit. Hiroshi, upon hearing this, finally feels relief, and he is glad that there is indeed someone who uses his brain a little within this game. Tesla tells Hiroshi that he regrets ordering the arrest, and as a small gesture of making up for the inconveniences, Tesla asks Hiroshi to enjoy the food because he has been completely absolved of all charges. Furthermore, if he ever needs help with the matter of Alicia and her violent intentions against him, he should just ask for help and Tesla will be there as soon as possible. Hiroshi couldn't be happier as he is finally free from all the hell he went through, but it's not like everything has ended for him because people still believe that he is a criminal. So, when he passes through the town, they throw all sorts of stuff at him as well as curse him like he ran over some puppies for fun. For Hiroshi to get to his house, he must cross a bridge, as it is on the outskirts of the city. With people hunting him down, it's impossible to get there, and since psychotic Alicia is surely also looking for him, it's best to buy equipment to be able to face her, or at least to be able to run away. But since Hiroshi isn't the richest person around, he has no money at all for anything. Therefore, as in real life, he has several options to earn money, including getting a loan, working to make a few bucks, or outright stealing. But since Hiroshi does have actual morals, he does not want to take any other option than working. Hiroshi also has prior experience of grinding to earn a few bucks in other games instead of buying skins like casual gamers. As people continue to label him as a bad person, he has to go to a somewhat shady job office, which gives rather strange jobs to people with not so good reputations. Upon arriving at the spot, the old woman who owns the place already knows who Hiroshi is and gives him a very well-paid job to go to an underground field to work. However, it takes a long time, and Hiroshi wants something quick to earn the necessary money for his equipment and get the hell out of this place. Then she gives him another job option that consists of doing things that Christian Grey from 50 Shades of Grey does. They give him a whip for this job, and although Hiroshi seems okay with it initially, he pulls out at the last moment. Upon seeing this, Renoa says that Hiroshi has a habit of complicating things for himself. He has rejected the two options to get money, so he has the last one left, which is to borrow money from somewhere. For this, they head towards where the famous chronically alcoholic Genji is, since he is the only one who might be willing to lend money to Hiroshi at this moment, or at least that's what Riona thinks. Upon arriving, Genji finds out everything that happened to Hiroshi and obviously makes fun of him. This bothers Hiroshi a lot because he doesn't think it's fair that this obese pig-like man makes fun of the situation when literally all that happened was caused by him. Genji, who notices the rather feisty and brash attitude of him, decides not to give him anything. He says that this entire meeting is a waste of time and that it is not worth his precious time. Then, as if to run salt on the wound, Genji makes fun of Hiroshi once again. This makes Hiroshi very angry, and eventually it triggers a fight between the two. They exchange a few blows, some of which are as amateurish as two schoolgirls fighting, but in both of their minds, the important thing is that there is a confrontation. Everything indicates that Hiroshi is going to win, but out of nowhere, the ghost of Martin appears on the spot and reminds Hiroshi of what he had done. This scares the latter quite a lot, and he ends up asking Genji for forgiveness. In the end, they end up talking, and Hiroshi is so tired that he even falls asleep. However, apparently, Riona and Genji had agreed that if Hiroshi defeated him, the alcoholic fat man would give up all the coins he had. Riona secretly makes Genji hold to that promise and takes the money. Now, with the necessary money, Hiroshi later heads to a store to buy some smoke-throwing artifacts in order to escape from tight situations. Obviously, Hiroshi has to choose between a low-resource store and one with a cute girl, and as always, his choice is the one where there is a girl. Unfortunately for him, that ends up costing him dearly in the end, because that chick was a profiteer, and eventually she ends up charging him more than the actual price of the smoke bombs. Since Hiroshi is currently regarded as a criminal by the larger society, he is not welcome in other stores and has to agree to buy the things at a much higher price. Finally, they head to the house where the game started so that they can pick up a sword for Hiroshi. Once they arrive, a very heavy atmosphere can be felt, but Hiroshi Hiroshi has to go for the sword no matter what. However, when he is about to do it, the psych ward patient Alicia suddenly pops up. Hiroshi, who is now extremely desperate, throws the smoke bomb to escape, but to his utter horror, the stupid thing doesn't work at all. Riona chimes in and says that as the game is realistic, the player has to light the fuse and not just throw it like they would in any game. Everything seems to have ended as there's no going back, because Hiroshi even realizes that he actually had no way of lighting the smoke artifact. On the other hand, Alicia prepares to launch the final attack, which she has been waiting for so long, but suddenly, none other than Mizurisa appears, willing to defend her dear bedwetter. As if the humiliation wasn't enough, Mizurisa makes it clear that bedwetter is the nickname she gave Hiroshi. Meanwhile, everyone around wonders what the hell she is even doing there. Mizurisa tells them that since it was Tesla who officially exonerated Hiroshi of all charges, anyone who dares to attack Hiroshi now will have to face her judgment. Alicia, of course, completely ignores what Mizurisa just said because she likes violence more than anything. She doesn't care about anything except finishing Hiroshi off, and if Mizurisa gets in her way, she'll take her down too. On the other hand, Mizurisa can't allow her dear Hiroshi to be attacked, so the confrontation begins. They exchange several blows in quick succession, but Alicia turns out to be even stronger than expected. She quickly realizes that while Mizurisa is powerful, she's also slow as a geriatric patient, so Alicia takes advantage of that, landing 2 precise blows that knock Mizurisa out. Hiroshi loses all hope because Alicia's win means he is sure to become like a lamb that is set to be butchered. If even someone as strong as Mizurisa couldn't stop Alicia, then he has no chance. Alicia is so powerful that she even manages to detect Riona, despite the fact that NPCs aren't supposed to be able to see or hear her. Hiroshi realizes that this girl is literally insane. Suddenly, Hiroshi remembers Kamui's words in which he had warned him not to fight Alicia head-on, but to try defeating her through other means. With his back against the wall and no way out, Hiroshi does the only thing he can think of, and he pulls out the classic Hongdae guy move and asks Alicia if she is open-minded. He surprises her by saying that he loves her, and doubles down on that by telling her he has always loved her, and that he wants to be her husband, and even wants to be the father of her children. He throws out every cheesy line in the book, and weirdly enough, it starts working. But Alicia says it's too late for that, as she also loves Hiroshi just like her brother loved him, and she's devastated by everything that happened. Even if it was an accident, the fact that Hiroshi ran away, said things that didn't make sense, and ultimately caused someone's death are stuff that she just can't forgive. Poor Alicia then breaks down and leaves the house crying. Riona is thrilled because, in the end, Hiroshi did manage to get rid of the insane Alicia, even if he had to use a rather shady way. But Hiroshi doesn't feel any joy, and instead, he feels nothing but guilt. All this time, he treated the 2 siblings like regular NPCs and never realized that they truly saw him as someone important, like a real brother. When the accident happened, instead of staying and trying to help or at least apologizing, he just did the worst thing possible in that moment. He ran away, and now he can't stop thinking about how badly he handled everything and what a huge disappointment he is. While he is marinating in his self-pity and guilt, Hiroshi suddenly has an idea. He decides to go to the Kanura tree, a beautiful place where he used to spend time with Martin and Alicia when they were children. Once there, Hiroshi calls out to the ghost of Martin to apologize and ask for forgiveness. Just as he had hoped, Martin's ghost actually appears and the 2 of them finally shake hands. Then Martin starts to glow, and Hiroshi realizes that this means that he has started to be purified of his human form. A memory sequence then plays, showing Martin, Alicia, and Hiroshi as kids, making a promise to be best friends forever. Now, Martin can finally rest in peace, and he thanks Hiroshi with a few last words and then disappears, his soul finally free from regret and attachment. Hiroshi realizes that he is filled with sorrow, but also a strange calm. It's like he finally reached the best possible conclusion to this tragic situation. The curse is lifted, and Hirowahi's in-game title is updated to something much more positive, though he doesn't check what it says. With the situation calmer now, Hiroshi has a few new priorities, the first of which is to settle things with Alicia once and for all. He then has to visit the blacksmith to repair his sword and lastly change his pants because they stink of a day-old urine. But just when things start to settle down for good, something strange happens. Hirowahi walks to the edge of a nearby hill and sees that the entire city is suddenly on fire, and he has no idea what is going on. This surprises Hiroshi quite a lot, as even Riona, who has been playing this game like a singer singing their only hit single, says that she has never seen anything like this in all the time she has been playing the game. Hiroshi tries to ask people what's going on, but he's unsuccessful in getting an answer. With so much chaos all over the place, people ignore him and just want to run away. He approaches the city blacksmith to see if he can get any information from him, and the blacksmith tells him that it's the goblins' fault, as they have just attacked the city. But Hiroshi thinks about the issue and is surprised because this city is supposed to be protected by a river that surrounds it from all sides. It turns out that the city had been facing a long drought, which caused all the water to dry up. And now these goblins have taken advantage of the fact that there is no protection, and thus they have launched an attack with everything they've got. Hiroshi has no self-awareness and gets excited because he'll finally be able to fight against the bugs of this game. For that reason, he asks the blacksmith to restore his sword, but the blacksmith gets angry because there's no time for any tinkering right now. Thus, he tells Hiroshi to do it himself, using a tool that is placed right in front of him. Hiroshi begins to try it, not because he likes hard work, but because he has no other choice. He spends a good while bellowing the fire and working the tool, but in the end, he ends up getting frustrated when he hears people outside, desperate and asking for help. He doesn't understand how it's possible that instead of helping others, he's wasting time removing rust from a sword. Finally, thinks about not being like a dog caught up in fireworks and decides to go out and face the goblins right now. Riona stops him and tells him that he is making a very wrong decision if he thinks he can face the goblins. Even though they're smaller, they have the strength of an ogre, and not even in his dreams would he be able to defeat one. Right now, he has a 120% chance of going to heaven, so it's better to calm down. Also, in case he didn't know, if he dies in the game, both the console and the video game will be completely destroyed. Previously, this unleashed massive legal problems between players and the company, so much so that even retail stores that had nothing to do with the game were flooded with complaints and protests. In the end, the game was branded as a complete dumpster fire, and that's why it had been slowly dying. Hiroshi knows that it doesn't make sense to buy a game that looks so good only for it to destroy the PC that cost him so much. But Riona tells Hiroshi that, for now, it's better to disconnect because she's not sure what might happen here. However, Hiroshi annals his inner anime protagonist and says that he wants to take a look, since he's dying of curiosity. When he opens the door, he manages to see one goblin, and he shudders because that was the first time a goblin had looked so horrifying. There's a little girl on the street, and Hiroshi can't help but want to protect her, while also experiencing what it feels like to face a goblin. Riona stops him again and tells him to think about how expensive a console is, only for it to be damaged just because he wants to die like a fool. He insists on going to save her, but luckily the city soldiers appear to face the monster. However, they are wiped out in 5 seconds, and Hiroshi realizes that just as Riona had said, these goblins are incredibly strong. Hiroshi is a little scared to see how powerful these goblins are, but he knows he has no choice but to go and defend the little girl. Riona warns him again that this is crazy, and only 2 players have ever defeated a goblin. One was Kamui, and the other was a professional boxer, who even admitted in an interview that the strongest rival of his life was a goblin. Nonetheless, Hiroshi takes the opportunity to change his pants, as his priority during a war is not smelling like urine. And with Riona coming in to distract the goblin, he runs to help the girl escape from the horrible situation. However, the distraction barely tickles the monster, and to make matters worse, another goblin appears. Hiroshi sees that the little girl looks like his sister, Kade, and although he knows there's nothing he can really do, he decides to play the decoy so that she at least manages to escape. However, the goblin ignores him and decides to go after the little girl anyway, as it seems he's only interested in her. Hiroshi doesn't intend to abandon her, so he sets off to prevent the worst from happening. It's at that moment that the Aniplot armor activates inside Hiroshi, as he suddenly begins running like the Flash out of nowhere, and miraculously manages to rescue the little girl. The duo is stunned by what just happened, and not even Hiroshi knows what the hell he just did. Still, the situation hasn't changed as they're in danger, and there's nothing to prevent being overwhelmed by the goblins. But just like with the police in real life, Tesla appears almost too late to save anyone. However, he is so strong that with a single attack, he turns the goblins into sushi. The guards arrive to help, take the little girl home, and let everything end well for the time being. Tesla thanks Hiroshi for the bravery he showed and gives him a couple of compliments. Hiroshi has proven to be a warrior, so Tesla offers him a position as an assistant to the guards, which is a glorified name for a freelance mercenary. Right now, the city needs all the help it can get, and if Hiroshi is available, it would be great. Hiroshi accepts without hesitation, as it seems safer to be with Tesla, who wants to use the opportunity to become stronger too. Once they agree to meet at the training camp, Hiroshi decides to disconnect from the game as he's satisfied with this session. The next day, after having a tiring day at school, Hiroshi gets a sudden urge to play again, but before doing so, he decides to review Kamui's guide one more time. There, he checks the goblin section and finds out that there are several ways to escape from the city. One is to earn people's trust and obtain an exit pass by royal order, basically like a premium pass, but doing that is boring, even if it's the safest method. Another option is to just run away and be chased by all kinds of monsters, but that's only for pro-level players who actually know how to fight or have some martial arts experience. But what interests Hiroshi here is that Kamui mentions the worst method, which is the event where the goblins attack the city. To get out of that scenario, the player can gather people and fight together, but that gives them only a 5% chance of survival. Then there's digging a hole and hiding from the goblins for 5 days, which raises the chances to 10%. And finally, there's joining the Royal Guard and fighting alongside Tesla, which turns out to be the absolute worst option, giving the player just a 0.1% chance of surviving. Hiroshi, who thinks he is some extremely wise person, hears this and is surprised because he thought it was the safest, but realizes that now he has a 99.9% chance of dying, and his console will likely be shattered. However, Riona tells him that if he has a certain title, which luckily Hiroshi does have, he can increase his chances of surviving. For this, he has to train the first 5 days and resist until the second wave of attacks from the goblins. However, achieving it will be extremely difficult, and the only encouraging thing is that once this infernal event is overcome, he will probably discover the very dark secret behind this city. Hiroshi, upon hearing how screwed up the event that awaits him is, even loses his appetite. The logical thing would be to withdraw from this game because he will surely fail. His console will be ruined, and he has no money to buy a new one. However, he remembers the words his sister had told him a day ago, so he goes to her room to give her food and thanks her for what she said, because those words made him think that he should not give up on the game. She had told him that he should not run away from things that scare him, and he must face them no matter what. He apologizes in advance because, as there will be no classes in the next few days, he will play a lot, and obviously he is going to scream about what is coming. On the other hand, his sister Kairi gives a rather weird expression because she doesn't know what the hell Hiroshi is saying. The latter then heads back to his room and logs in to play the game again. Once he enters the game, he heads to the Queen Governor's mansion along with Tesla and Riona. There, he finally meets the Queen, and she thanks him for his bravery in enlisting in the Royal Guard. In an extremely filmy and pretentious way, Tesla introduces Hiroshi and two other people named Palu and Grenada as the new temporary recruits. Then, Tesla yaps as if he is some theater actor and talks about the effort that must be made, how to train hard and protect the Queen's mansion, because apparently it is the next target of the goblins. Then the redhead professional yapper finally leaves, and a blonde guy named Bob is left in charge of introducing Hiroshi to the place where he will stay while he is training to become a soldier. Hiroshi then changes to be able to go to training, but Bob is struck by how thin he is, as he is a little worried about whether the newbie will be able to endure the hard work that is to come. The one who will be in charge of training these three is a rather sinister-looking man named Amos, who has a nose as red as a circus clown. Amos has a little annoyance with Hiroshi because he thinks the newbie is not supposed to be there among the soldiers. Once the clown nose instructor stops talking, Hiroshi meets a quiet and kind girl named Kathy. She was the one who took the little girl home after Hiroshi had saved her from the clutches of the goblins, and apparently she wants to get along quite well with Hiroshi, which is the first time any girl wants to be near him. Unfortunately, the tomato nose interrupts them as he looks quite irritated to see that Hiroshi is doing nothing. In fact, Amos challenges him to a sword duel to test his skills. In a rather obvious outcome, the worst happens as Hiroshi is terrible at using the sword, and it takes the coach a few seconds to humiliate him. The spectators are very disappointed as they had thought that being a mercenary, Hiroshi would have known how to fight. Things change when Granada faces the instructor because in a matter of seconds, he manages to defeat Amos. Everyone is impressed by the power of this guy, which only makes Hiroshi feel even worse. Following this pathetic display of his lack of power, even Bob snubs Hiroshi for how weak he turned out to be. At mealtime, Riona tells him not to get down, as it was obvious that something like this would happen because Hiroshi really doesn't know anything about combat in real life. Even so, she encourages him to go ahead, and above all, not to prove Kamui right. Hiroshi agrees with her, so to be in a better frame of mind the next day, they go to sleep while still being inside the game. A new day arrives, and as always, it starts on the wrong foot because Hiroshi overslept, while the others have been training for a while. Also, Hiroshi is in Delulu Land as he thinks that, despite arriving late to training and with only a few movements, he is going to unlock some special attack, and precisely for this reason, he gets a good scolding from the instructor. It is obvious that Hiroshi is still not fully aware that the game is actually real, so he has to train to gain a skill. Nonetheless, he starts training like the good novice that he is, but other students around him start talking about who he is and that he finished off his best friend, among other crimes. Hiroshi tries to clarify to them that it was a misunderstanding, but Granada and Palu are not interested. They just tell him to try to stay away because a bad element can damage the entire squad. Hiroshi realizes that he is having a horrible time here. Luckily, Kathy is still good to him despite the others seeing him as a bag of garbage thrown on the street. She even teaches him how he has to use the sword. The third day arrives and things couldn't be worse for Hiroshi because he has to face Granada in some friendly matches. It goes without saying that, despite trying, with a single attack, Granada manages to defeat him as the difference in strength is absolute. On top of this, Granada and Palu are next level crooks as they start thinking of charging Hiroshi for being in the training, as if that depended on them. Hiroshi can't believe that even in a video game, he has to put up with people like that, similar to the two bullies who made him have a bad time at school. Hiroshi is very discouraged by everything that is happening to him, but Riona discovers something that might be interesting to try. They go to an advisory office, and Hiroshi immediately goes into gossip mode about everything that has happened to him inside the training camp. He tells the old man that the coach doesn't take him seriously, his teammates make fun of him, and as if that wasn't enough, some broke bullies even ask him for money. The old counselor asks him to please reveal every incident that he can remember, and robotically adds that he has now become interested in the matter. So Hiroshi starts pouring his heart out. But in the end, the counselor only ends up telling him that everything is his fault. The counselor trolls Hiroshi for enlisting without having any kind of skill and being a weakling. He then goes one step further and says it will be better if Hiroshi quits immediately. The latter is utterly shattered, so he leaves the office while thinking that nothing ever goes well for him. Shortly afterwards, Kathy appears at the spot, approaches Hiroshi, and asks if he's alright. The latter is not used to girls showing interest in him, and thus, he tries to act tough by claiming he is completely fine. Upon hearing this, Kathy looks visibly relieved and adds that the office is actually for physical wounds and illnesses, and not the human resources department. Everything begins to make sense to Hiroshi as to why the old counselor was so blunt and rude to him. Moreover, Kathy is quite kind and tells Hiroshi not to feel bad, and adds that everyone goes at their own pace. She continues consoling him and says that it's better to pray to God, which will surely help him feel better. Hiroshi, although he has no faith in this type of thing, decides to go to church to see if they can help him there, and also because he cannot resist the temptation of being with a baddie. Hiroahi also understands that this visit has been put in place in order to trigger a quest in the game. After a while, the duo reach the church, and a nun tells Hiroshi that she has found the root of his problem. She then adds that she is going to purify him through a ritual, which turns out to be dunking the poor man in holy water like he is a stale donut. In a somewhat dismissive way, the nun tells Hiroshi that with this ritual, everything will go well from now on. But for the moment, it only makes Hiroshi catch a cold. Even so, he believes her words since it is a game, and doing that purification thing would be of some use. Keeping a positive attitude, Riona also claims that Hiroshi's luck has now changed, and tomorrow things will be better. However, unbeknownst to them, this whole ritual is completely trash and does nothing. The proof of the ritual's uselessness comes on day 4 of the mercenary training, as Hiroshi is still beaten in sword practice by Granada. Once again, the Nullies have to run his nose in the dirt as Granada, along with Palu, try to extort money from him after the sword practice lessons. Following Riona's suggestion, he tries to go after the weaker-looking Palu, but Hiroahi gets absolutely smoked by him as well. Soon afterwards, Kathy arrives at the spot and sees that the newbie is being bullied. When she tries to get Amos to resolve the situation, both Granada and Palu play innocent. They then try and pressure Kathy to side with them, and she succumbs to their pressure. In a shocking twist of fate, Kathy is pressured to say that she is not Hiroshi's friend, and walks off with the 2 bullies. Riona laughs at the situation and comments that the game is very realistic in these kinds of situations. Hiroshi is now alone, with no friends. And there's nothing he can do, because he is as strong as a side character going against the main villain. But Riona tells him to calm down because she can use her fairy magic to help him in a way. The 5th day arrives, and it is the last day of the training. Granada is having a terrible time because his special boots are missing from the dormitory. Those boots were valuable to him as they were handmade by his grandmother before he became a mercenary. Then his anger increases even more as he discovers that someone has thrown his boots in a pool of sewer water. Afterwards, the big dumb mercenary's day gets even worse as someone has hidden his sword. He ends up finding it in a toilet, out of all places. After he pulls out the sword, Granada vehemently yells at Hiro and blames him for the recent pranks against him. Hiro denies that he's the one doing these acts, and the rest of the mercenaries stand up for Hiro, claiming he couldn't be the culprit as he has been helping to look out for both his boots and sword. While this heated debate is going on, later on an old woman who had sneaked into the locker room screams in horror. She reveals that she couldn't find her innerwear anywhere in her room, and now she has somehow found them in Granada's backpack. Everyone starts laughing at him because they think he is some sort of weirdo. All his companions who previously supported him began to lash out at him because his abilities do not give him the right to steal an old woman's private clothes. Even Palu walks away from his best friend, Granada, leaving the latter completely alone. Later, Amos notifies all of the mercenaries about Granada's departure from the group. The Tomato Nose cannot help but throw a taunt as he says that he was disappointed in Granada, but what he did doesn't surprise him. Suddenly, Tesla arrives with a letter in his hands and reads it in front of the whole group. The letter says that it was none other than the Tomato Nose, Amos, who stole the sword and forced Granada to resign. Ever since the day Granada defeated Amos, the latter has harbored a secret resentment. On the other hand, everyone believes that the one who left the letter in Tesla's office was Palu. Tesla knows that Amos hasn't always been the best man to become an instructor, so he decides to ask everyone if he is truly fit to train them. Suddenly, Kathy yells that he is not, because he allowed everyone else to treat Hiroshi badly when he clearly could have stopped it. The Big Nose denies everything, but the others present on the spot begin to feel bad about how they behaved with Hiroshi, and start to confess that the Tomato Nose is indeed not prepared for the role of coach. In fact, some students lash out that he is very lazy and is just a waste of salary, which can be used elsewhere. Tesla, upon hearing this, does not expel Amos, but takes away his position as coach, leaving him as just another one of the bunch. That night, Hiroshi is having a chat with Riona in his dormitory, and the worst-kept secret finally comes out. It was Riona who orchestrated everything against those guys. Hiroshi feels grateful, but he also makes it clear that he doesn't feel that good either. He thinks Riona went too far with the revenge because he had never seen grown people cry the way the Tomato Nose did, but Riona reminds him that now there are more important things to do. The training is over, and tomorrow is the day when the goblins attack. Hiroshi will have to find a way to survive, or his console will be completely destroyed. However, Hiroshi does not intend to give up, and Riona, seeing his determination, decides to give him a very special gift. She reveals that it is time to tell him why she has gone through so much trouble to accompany him to this point. She says there is a secret behind why she has been looking for someone to finish this game. It turns out that Riona met Kamui a long time ago inside the game. She saw him walking through the city when she was just a novice and approached him. Like some inexperienced youngster who has no riz, she directly asked Kamui out. He, on the other hand, left rudely, but not before telling Riona that he didn't like women who resembled cows in appearance. Riona was justifiably offended and swore that one day she would find someone to pass the game to take that privilege away from him. And when that day comes, she will marry the one who succeeds. That's why she has been encouraging Hiroshi to pass the game, and be able to get married. Hiroshi doesn't know what to think about it because the whole secret thing sounds a bit disappointing. But out of nowhere, Tesla appears and apologizes to Hiroshi for what he had to go through during training, but for Hiroshi, that has already passed. The reason why the redhead is awake so late is that he senses that the goblins might make some movement. Hiroshi knows that his senses are right in this case, but there's something else that worries Tesla. He asks Hiroshi if he wants to leave the city and adds that he doesn't judge anyone who wants that, because he too would also like to go outside of this boring and extremely sanitized city where there is nothing to do. Therefore, they promise that if they pass the tough test that is coming, it would not be a bad idea to go on adventures together in the outside world. Hiroshi finds this very unusual, as if the redhead knows that he is going to die or something bad is about to happen. Therefore, he decides to disconnect to check the guide one more time. Moments later, Hiroshi awakens in his room and is shocked that his sister Kaede is in his room, closely gazing over him. At first, Kaede is rather concerned as she had noted Hiroshi acting extremely strangely and wanted to check up on him. Hiroshi asks if she is worried for his well-being, but Kaede vehemently denies that thought. This obviously causes an argument to break out between the two, and Kaede abruptly leaves Hiroshi's room. With nothing else to do, Hiroshi then watches Kamui's walkthrough and learns how to beat the Goblin Quest. Ryona also reveals a secret trick he can use in the game, but for the moment, Hiroshi can't visualize it. Finally, the 6th day arrives, which just so happens to be the day the goblins will attack. Hiroshi and the other mercenaries are all lined up within the courtyard, and everyone is ready for battle. However, Tesla announces that there are 2 new reinforcements and brings out the bickering duo of Mizurisa and Alicia. This is something that worries Hiroshi a lot, for fear of being attacked by either of them. Tesla gives new directions. Although it is true that the danger of the goblins is imminent, several crimes have also been reported throughout the city. Therefore, they are going to split up and patrol various points of it. Hiroshi gets the East District, and he will have to go with these 2 crazy girls. Tesla thought they got along well because they greeted each other before, but obviously Hiroshi doesn't want to go with these 2 for anything in the world, as they seem very eager to do anything violent to him. Still, there is no other choice, and he has to follow orders to go with them. While they are patrolling the city, Mizurisa tells Hiroshi that they have to be alert with Alicia, as she has not forgotten what Hiroshi did to her brother. Hiroshi is annoyed that she says that when she also wants to hurt him, but he decides to shut his mouth. Nearby, in the streets of the city, a mysterious thief has just snatched a lady's wallet while she was simply walking around the city. The guy manages to dodge Hiroshi, but Alicia, who has a particular hobby of being violent for no reason, goes a bit too far and slices off the thief's arm. Hiroshi then tries to return the lady's belongings, but she simply faints because the arm is still clutching the purse. Risa then asks the thief what the hell is wrong with him to be stealing around the city at such times. He tells her that soon the goblins will finish off everyone, so he doesn't care anymore. Also, there is someone who is inciting them to commit all kinds of crimes because, as the royal guard is distracted with other matters, it is the ideal time to do whatever they please. Hiroshi tries to get information out of him as soon as possible to discover the culprit, and he only says that it is someone who is in a kind of casino or tavern. So the trio heads there, and upon arrival, they see that there are many bandits. To capture the leader, the 2 crazy girls decide to face them all, while Hiroshi takes advantage of the space to free the hostages. And eventually, they catch the man who had been inciting others to commit these crimes, and it happens to be none other than alcoholic Genji. Then he begins to talk about why he orchestrated all this mess, and it all boils down to him being a selfish person who doesn't care about other people as long as he can take advantage of the situation. Hiroshi is very disappointed that he has taken this stance. He thought they were friends, or at least they were on their way to being so. Genji laughs at him for believing it, so Hiroshi decides to give him what he deserves. Both are willing to fight, so another battle starts between these 2, which is as funny as watching 2 children fight because neither of them can throw hands. Luckily, Alicia gives Genji the beating he deserves in less than 2 seconds. In the end, they ended up arresting everyone and then taking them to prison. Tesla thanks Hiroshi and the 2 crazy girls for capturing the gang of bandits. But before they can celebrate what they have done, the attack of the goblins begins. All the people start to despair, and to make matters worse, Hiroshi gets a fatal stomachache, like those that you get when you have eaten on the street at 2 in the morning. Ryona tells him to go to the bathroom as soon as possible to avoid doing it while he is in the middle of combat, and that's what he does, but before he can finish, out of nowhere, he sees that there is a damn goblin stalking him like a predator. Hiroshi immediately starts screaming for help, but luckily, Mizurisa arrives at the right time to cut that bug in half. But Alicia is a weirdo, and she proudly says that in case Hiroshi was wondering, she was able to save him because she was spying on him by smelling the trail of his urine. In exchange for saving his life, she tries to seduce him so that he would fall for her, which would allow her to take advantage of him as soon as possible. She even feels good as she makes a small wound on his thighs with a sword. But Alicia also appears on the spot and interrupts this uncomfortable situation, saying that it is not the time for nonsense. Lisa is not amused by her interference, so they are both determined to fight for Hiroshi, or at least that's what Alicia thinks. Hiroshi tells them that's enough and that the priority is to find Tesla, or else they won't be able to survive. Along the way, Hiroshi relapses with his stomach pain. He doesn't want to go through the same thing again because ruining all the effort he has made so far by soiling his pants would be an experience he would never forgive himself for. Ryona asks him about it and sarcastically questions if he plans to ruin everything just like in the past. However, she tells him that he can tell her about his past without any problem because she is already an adult and would never make fun of him. Hiroshi begins to tell her everything that happened to him, and obviously she does make fun of him. In the end, the stomach pain goes away after the talk, and they decide to move as soon as possible because they need to reach the North Gate to meet Tesla. When they finally manage to reach him, they see how he is fighting against a huge group of goblins. Hiroshi knows that this is bad because, although Tesla is powerful and can finish off several right now, there are many strong goblins there. Luckily, Alicia and Mizurisa also arrive to support. Apparently, they are strong enough to be able to finish off several goblins without any inconvenience. However, not everything is as well as humans would like. At the South Gate, a powerful goblin called One Eye has destroyed the gate that was supposed to be very resistant because it is made of reinforced steel. Right now, those bugs are marching towards the queen. So Hiroshi decides that they must go to help as soon as possible, or their queen could soon become Goblin Donor Kebab. When they arrive at the South Gate, they realize that the one responsible for everything is a red ogre, which, according to Tesla, is the current Goblin King, an extremely strong creature. In the end, it is his fault that this event only gives you a 0.1% chance of survival. Tesla sends for a cage to capture him, and tells Hiroshi to get ready, because what awaits them is something beyond words. Hiroshi doesn't want him to fight because he knows he won't survive, but he also knows that if it is not him, no one else will fight the Red Orge because everyone else is like scared little kitties. He simply has no choice, but just before he can finish his thought, the two girls arrive as reinforcements. But Mizurisa simply can't take the power of the ogre. Alicia, on the other hand, is stronger and helps Tesla fight the enemy. Meanwhile, a cage is getting closer and closer, and apparently the humans have to hold out until it reaches its destination. Inside that cage, there are several goblins that were captured. Tesla's plan is that if the ogre sees his comrades in there, he will be distracted, and they will take that opportunity to finish him off. And indeed, that is exactly what happens. And when the main Red Orge is looking for other goblins, Tesla does not hesitate for a second to end this war. But Hiroshi suddenly starts to think about how easy this was, and it doesn't match what Kamui said about this event, where he practically had no chance of surviving. And for the first time in his life, Hiroshi uses his brain and remembers that every time he passed through a certain area of the prison, he heard horrible screams. Until now, he didn't know what the hell those sounds were, but now he sees the captured goblins. Tesla, seeing that Hiroshi has just discovered everything, finishes off the ogre urgently. He then turns to Hiroshi and expresses his amazement because Hiroshi looks like he has a single-digit IQ, but turns out he is smarter than his looks give off. It turns out that those locked-up goblins are children of the Red Goblin, and they are being used as bait so that all the other goblins go to the city to rescue them. This way, they would finish off the humans they come across along the way, outside the city's walls. Then the queen jumps in and tells everyone that this was the best method they'd found to keep the people of the city completely isolated without complaining. The people would be gullible enough to believe that they are being protected from external beasts when they are only being repressed by the queen and Tesla, so that the city can be ruled like an independent state, away from the others. Goblins themselves are very intelligent, peaceful creatures that do not usually attack humans, but Tesla saw that he could take advantage of the aggressiveness they showed when they were hurt. In this way, they have used that tool to deceive absolutely everyone. Immediately, Tesla finishes off the soldiers who were present there because anyone who finds out about this secret is destined to die, including poor Hiroshi. Hiroshi's in deep trouble as he's staring down a measly 0.1% chance of surviving this nightmare of a game, and he's feeling about as useful as a paper towel in a hurricane. The dude can't even handle a basic goblin, so facing off against Tesla, who is way too strong, is something he can't even think about. Meanwhile, that smug jerk is about to unleash a lethal attack, and it is like asking a toddler to wrestle a grizzly bear. Hiroshi's just standing there, resigned to his doom, probably wondering if his virtual gravestone will at least have a cool epitaph. But then, out of nowhere, Alicia, his childhood friend, who was ready to shank him a hot minute ago, throws herself in front of Tesla's attack like some kind of anime martyr. Hiroshi's brain short circuits as 1 second. She is glaring daggers at him, and the next, she's taking a fatal hit to save his sorry backside. As she is fading away, Alicia drops a bombshell. Her brother visited her in a dream, telling her to forgive Hiroshi because he's not to blame for whatever drama went down in their past. So she joined the royal guard to protect him, dedicating her life to making sure he could chase his dreams. And once she has revealed all that, Alicia says she's at peace and tells Hiroshi to seize the day and keep smiling on me, even as she exits the stage left in the most tragic way possible. Tesla, being the absolute worst, just cackles at this whole scene. He taunts Hiroshi, saying that the whole scenario where Alicia died for him is cute, but too bad it only buys him 2 extra minutes. Then he declares that the time to finish off Hiroshi has arrived. The latter is very angry about the situation, and inexplicable way, he grabs his sword and manages to dodge not 1 but 2 attacks from Tesla. No one there understands how that is possible because no one has done this except Kamui. Although Hiroshi himself is somewhat surprised that he is not completely trash, he also realizes that what Kamui told him is true. Turns out that Kamui had said in his book that there is something that can be used both in the game and in real life, and that is emotion, conviction, the desire to win, and human will in general. It is so strong that it increases the player's stats and even makes them exceed their limits, making them win or even change their destiny in a way that they didn't think think was possible. This is how Hiroshi begins to attack Tesla in a formidable way. And finally, Hiroshi demonstrates that he isn't simply an NPC, but an excellent fighter. And this is not with any random person, but against Tesla himself. The battle rages on for several minutes, and after a lot of attacks, Hiroshi finally manages to stand toe-to-toe with the villain. But right then, Hiroshi's sword breaks, and Tesla knows that everything is in his favor. So, without wasting any more time, he decides to end this once and for all. However, in a surprising twist of events, Hiroshi appears in paradise and runs into Martin. There, Hiroahi asks for forgiveness for dying at the hands of Tesla. He also notifies Martin that the same thing happened to Alicia. But this is not over, as Martin reminds him that they promised to fight together till the end. So, he urges his friend to get up, keep his promise, and fight together because currently there is a battle to win. Upon hearing this super cringeworthy speech, Hiroshi wakes up and realizes that his sword is being completely rebuilt thanks to Martin's will. It is so powerful that it shatters Tesla's golden sword. Even then, Tesla pulls out a completely new one, and now he is ready to attack again, but this time with his ultimate ability. Hiroshi knows that this is dangerous, but he is sure that he is going to win, and both are ready for the final attack. Hiroshi, confident he will achieve victory, manages to see Tesla's movement and finally manages to win something in his life. But the queen suddenly appears out of nowhere and stabs him in the back, changing Hiroshi's win into a defeat in the blink of an eye. Right now, Hiroshi can't believe how close he was to passing that obstacle in the game. He felt that he had already won, but it slipped away from him in the most low-eye way possible. Riona laughs a little because she knows that she should have helped a little more with what happened with the queen, but she doesn't care a bit. She tells him that since his console is damaged, she will lend him a completely free one to try again. However, Hiroshi feels a bit empty, feeling that everything he lived in that game has been erased and he has to start all over again from the beginning. But suddenly he sees that Kamui's guide has an option that didn't appear before. Upon entering it, it says some interesting things because in reality, there is a method to be able to start again, but from 1 hour before dying. For this, he needs a new console, insert the damaged game, say some very rare words, and then insert a new cartridge. With all that, he can try again. Although, of course, whether he succeeds this time or not is already a matter of his skills. Upon hearing this, he gets too excited because he believes that with this opportunity, he can do everything better and even save Alicia. Riona asks him why he is so excited if he doesn't know if he will be able to defeat Tesla anyway. So Hiroshi makes up his mind and asks for a whole month to prepare in the best possible way. That way, his chances of defeating Tesla will have to increase no matter what. As time goes on, Hiroshi rediscovers his passion for running through a video game, boosting his motivation and overall well-being. His relationships improve, including with his sister, friend, and teacher, and he gains confidence to confront school bullies, inspired by overcoming the game character Tesla. A month later, he meets Riona to borrow a console, determined to fully engage in the game and defeat Tesla once and for all. Comment down below, Mad Gamer, if you finished the video. Subscribe so you don't miss the next video.